Assalamu alaikum. We will begin with lecture 14 today, and I am going to recap for you what we did in the last lecture before I move on to the second poem of John Keats. In the last lecture we looked at Ode on a Grecian Urn, and I analyzed the poem line by line for you, and we also discussed some of the themes that were emerging from the poem. But unfortunately I could not analyze the poem in detail with you or discuss the themes in detail with you. So I'm going to take the first part of this lecture to analyze Ode on a Grecian Urn, because it is an important work of Keats. It spells out his philosophy, his ideas, his concepts, as I said, about love, about beauty, and about truth. Now Keats was a sensuous poet, and he was a poet not of two worlds. He was a poet who was remarkable in his ability to become invisible, to hide from this material world of ours and to enter into another world. So this was his remarkable achievement, and what he describes as the negative capability of a poet. It is this negative capability in Keats, or in the poet, that makes him transcend the ordinary, that makes him transcend the everyday, that makes him transcend the realities of this world. And it is this negative capability that leads him on to the other world, to the other imaginary world, to the world created by fantasy, by extreme fantasy. And it is in that world that the poet experiences intense emotions and feelings. And it is that world which is far removed from our real world. And it is that world where everything is blissful, where everything is happy, where everything is peaceful, where everything is immortal, where everything is timeless, where everything is for eternity. So it is like this other world, like the concept of paradise that we have in our religion, or in the major religions of the world. In the paradise we believe that we will have a blissful state. We will always be happy there. We believe that there will be no worries, no tensions, no problems there. We believe that we will lead an immortal existence there, and we believe that time will not matter there. We will not age, we will not become dead, we will not die, and the beauty will not fade, truth will not change, nothing will change in paradise. So just like we have this concept of paradise, Keats too have this concept of an imaginary world, and in this imaginary world he likes to get lost. He likes to fade away into this world, and sometimes it is through the beautiful objects that he sees or notices, like the Grecian urn. In Ode on a Grecian Urn, he sees this beautiful vase, and he enters into the world of the vase. He enters into its world and tells us, narrates for us the tales that are sketched on its body. And the other poem that we are going to discuss today, you shall see, he discusses how the poet is led on into the world of Nightingale. When he enters the world of Nightingale, he leaves this world of worries behind, and he enters into a state of ecstasy, into a state of extreme joy, of intense emotions, and in that beautiful state where everything is beauty, he feels that truth is not far away, and that he feels is the only true existence. So that is how, and that is why Keats can never separate the two ideas. For him, truth and beauty are one. They are inseparable, like I discussed with you in the last class, and today we will look at it again in detail. So we saw how in Ode on a Grecian Urn, he moves from stanza to stanza, and he describes to you what is happening in the world of the urn. He describes you the different pictures, the images that are drawn on the urn. He talks about trees laden with green leaves. He talks about a couple who are rejoicing in their love. He talks about a young lad who is singing blissful songs. He talks about musicians who are making beautiful, happy music. And he talks about a lonely, deserted village. He talks about a sacrificial image of a ram being dragged for sacrifice. And towards the end, in the last stanza, he talks about how this world of urn, this world of beauty, how it leaves a message for mankind, for the humans, for us who are mortals. So that immortal world seems to address this mortal world. And the inhabitants of the immortal world, they address the inhabitants of this mortal world. And the message that the urn is giving to us, to the mortals, is that beauty is truth and truth beauty. And then he says that is all ye know on earth and all ye need to know. So for him, that is all that matters. That is all knowledge combined in one thought. So beauty and truth are one. Wherever there is beauty, there lies truth. And wherever there is truth, beauty can never be far away. So Ode on a Grecian Urn, you saw, offers very deep meditative thoughts. The poet, although is only reflecting on the drawings, on the figures etched on the body of the urn, yet he's asking us to think hard, to think deeply, to meditate upon our existence. So this is how he offers his philosophies of life, of love, of truth, of beauty. He's offering us deep philosophical thoughts, and it makes us think. His poem makes the readers stop and think as to why Keats has uttered those lines. I told you in the very beginning how T.S. Eliot describes these lines as meaningless, as appearing to be not part of the poem. But T.S. Eliot may be right in his own way, but you can see that if you take out these lines from the poem will lose half its beauty. The lines give it the moral worth, the philosophical worth, the intellectual depth. So they are an essential part of the poem. So let's analyze the last lines where he calls beauty truth and truth beauty. The first point is that the poetic experience can be compared to the mystic's experience of union with the ultimate truth, or the Lord, the maker of the universe. This poetic experience that Keats is describing for you may not be very difficult for us, for Muslims, or maybe for some other religions. In some other religions, it may not be really difficult to understand, because it is so close to a mystic's experience and a mystic's desire and a mystic's devotion to his beloved, who is the Lord, who is the maker, who is the creator of the universe. So the mystic, the holy person, he also wants to achieve union with God. He wants to be united to the beloved, who is God, who is the Lord, who is the maker of the universe, and that for him is the only truth. Is everything else, everything in this world for him is not true, does not hold any truth. And if you remember, the great Greek philosopher Plato, he also described this world as an imitation of an imitation. He said that this world that we see with our eyes and which we can experience with our senses, this world is just an imitation of some other world. So Keats, like the mystic, is aspiring for that true world, that true reality. If this is the imitation, there must be some reality. There must be some true value of things. So that other world is the true, real world. And this world that we see around us is only an imitation of that world. So a mystic also believes that that all the objects that are around, they do not matter to him, because they do not offer truth. He does not associate the truth value to them. That truth value is important. The true truth value is attached to the beloved, because when you are united with the beloved, with your beloved, nothing else matters. With the mystic, that beloved is the Lord. With Keats, it is this ideal world that he creates. So in that sense, he wants to ascend. He wants to leave this world and he wants to ascend to another plane. He wants to become part of another world where beauty, truth, love all merge into one, and they are not separate. In this world of ours, these words are divided into separate compartments. We look for truth. We associate truth value with certain things and not with certain things. We look for beauty, and beauty we associate with certain things only and not with all things. We look for love, and love is also not for all, for some. So we put these categories into different compartments in this world. But in that other world that Keats is talking about, he says, they are all one, because in that world everything's beauty, the whole world is beauty, and it is all truth, and it is all actually real. And there is only love. Everything is filled with love in that world. The mystic is so absorbed in the beauty of the beloved that nothing else exists for him. The only truth or reality is the beauty before him. All else is nothingness and unreal. This is what I've just explained, how for a lover the beloved only matters, how for a mystic the beloved or the Lord only exists and is real and is true. Everything else is unreal, is untrue, is a betrayal, and is not beautiful. Keats too is so absorbed in the beauty of the urn that every other reality fades from his mind. So the beautiful object so captures the mind of the Keats that he forgets about everything else. When he's focusing with all his energy, with all his might on that object of beauty, everything else fades out of view, out of his thoughts. And he rejoices in the beautiful world of the urn, where there is lasting happiness, and only that is real and true for him, and not the painful world of the mortals. So in that beautiful world he feels happy, he feels full of peace, and that becomes the true state of things. That becomes so real for him that this mortal world becomes unreal, and it becomes painful for him. Similarly, a critic, Nicole Smith, the reference is given to you, in 2001 made some comments on Keats' poem. He finds a set conflict in these lines. He believes that the lines have a contradiction in themselves. There is a conflict in these lines. He says the art object does not reflect reality. As we experience it, it reflects the ideal, which is not achievable in real life. For Nicole, the conflict is that the world of the art object, or the world of the urn in this poem, it is not real. It is unreal. It's not like Plato said, it's not like a mystic experiences, but it is an intellectual speaking, and he says that the world of the art is not the real world. It is an imaginary. That is an imaginary world. That is the ideal world which cannot be achieved in this real life. So how can Keats say that that world is true? That world is a true world. And so how can he say that beauty is truth and truth is beauty? There is no truth in that unreal world because it is unreal. So you see, he describes that there is a conflict, there is this aesthetic conflict in these lines. He does not interpret those lines like I just did for you. He's giving you another interpretation of those lines. And as students, it is important that you keep both interpretations in mind and understand and evaluate and come up with your own ideas when you interpret these lines. He says that the aesthetic life of the urn is insufficient for human experience. Perfect beauty exists as on the urn, captured, frozen, and artificial, and cannot be sought in the real world. So he says that this imaginary world, it can never be enough for us. It can never console us. It can never permanently take away our worries, our problems. So it is insufficient for human experience. And this perfect beauty, this perfect world that Keats is creating, which is captured, which is frozen, which is artificial, he says this, it is not part of the real world. It is some imaginary, unreal world that Keats creates and wrongfully associates truth with it. So therefore he concludes that the message is not of hope for mankind. So he says that Keats does not give a message of hope. Keats does not show that there can be an end to misery. There can be an end to troubles, to worries. So he gives no hope. So this is what Nicole Smith suggests. So you have two views. You have one view in which you see Keats is talking about, when Keats is talking about his intense emotions, and he is able to link beauty with truth. He becomes so much part of that other world that for him that world is a real world. So beauty becomes truth also. But on the other hand, you have another interpretation where the critics have discerned, they have found a contradiction, a conflict in the lines, and that suggests that the world of a painting or an art or anything, or a movie that we see or a novel that we read, he says that world cannot be the real world. It can affect us, but it can only affect us temporarily, and we can only feel happy for a short time. It cannot change our situation for a long time. So he says this world is imaginary world, so it is unreal. It is not true. It may be a beautiful world, it may be a thing of beauty, but it is not true. So this is the conflict that some critics have found in these lines. Now let's look at the poem in general. In the poem, we saw that there is a comparison between a work of art and our world. Keats is comparing, although he doesn't talk about it when he is describing to you the world of the urn, but we know, we are comparing. As we read about the world of the urn, we are comparing. So he offers you a comparison between a work of art which is frozen in time, where everything is timeless, where time has stopped, and where everything knows no limits, where everything is infinite, it is limitless, there's freedom. There's complete freedom, in fact. So he compares this work of art, which is frozen in time, to our world, which is mortal, which will end, which will die. So there is this one constant comparison between a piece of art that is permanent and our world that is temporary. Then the world of the urn is described as unchanging, silent, and has remained fresh and beautiful. This I already explained to you when we were looking at the lines of the poem. The world of the urn is never changing. The musicians will keep on playing music. The bold lover will keep on seeking his beloved for a kiss. The young lad will keep on lying under the tree singing beautiful, merry songs. The trees will never shed their green leaves and will never see autumn. So it is unchanging. Time is frozen in the world of urn. And it is silent. Silent was emphasized throughout the poem. It is not associated with noise. The silence is a special quality of the urn, and because it is unchanging, it remains fresh and it remains beautiful. Then there are different approaches of the younger romantic poets that you should keep in mind. There are the differences in the younger group of romantic poets, and especially the two that you have studied. One is Shelley. We saw that Shelley was seeking change in the present state of affairs, and he was hopeful for a better future. With Shelley, he wanted to change the society, in the society of the present time, and was hopeful for a better future. But Keats, we see, is meditative. He's brooding over the past and sometimes over the present. But he's afraid to look towards the future. He does not offer any comments about future. So he's meditative and he broods over past and present. Keats's definition of poetry, in his own words, if poetry come not as naturally as the leaves to a tree, it had better not come at all. So, like, you can compare it to Wordsworth's description of poetry when he calls it a spontaneous overflow of powerful emotions, of powerful feelings, spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. So similarly, Keats also says that if poetry does not come as naturally as the leaves to a tree, it had not better come at all. So poetry comes naturally to a poet. It is spontaneous. It is not created or produced with an effort or with a conscious or intellectual effort. In Keats's poem, especially in Ode on a Grecian, there are certain conflicts that he is dealing with throughout the poem. And I have listed some of them for you. There is this conflict, and these conflicts also form the major themes of the poem. So they are conflicts, but they're also the themes in his poem. There is this theme of, or conflict of transience, and transience of this world, this life, transience of beauty in this world, transience of love in this world, transience of truth in this world, transience of life in this world. So transience or shortness of love, of life in our world, in the world of the mortals, is compared to the enduring and the permanence of art. The art is everlasting. A piece of art is for all times, and it is for all generations. It is for the present as well as for the future. It has lasting influence also. So there is this conflict between the transience and the enduring art. On the one hand, man is mortal. He will die, but his art, that will live on, that is enduring, and that is permanent. The second conflict is between dream and reality. And Keats is fond of reverie, as we saw. So he enters into a dream world, but then he returns from that world of dream and to the world of reality. So there is, we notice this conflict between the two worlds. They are different from each other. The world of dream for him is the world of happiness, the world of beauty, the world of truth. And this reality, or the real world, is a world of woe, of fretful fever, of parched tongues, of love, a fickle love, of youth being replaced with old age. So reality does not bring happiness for the poet. Then there is a conflict between joy and melancholy states of mind. There is joy when the poet is in the other world, is in his imaginary world, and he's melancholy when he's sad when he is in this material world, where the worries, problems, pains of this world, they bow him down, they trouble him, and they take away his peace of mind. We also see the conflict between ideal and the real, which is the same as a dream and reality. There's an ideal world and there's the real world, and they are conflicting. They're different from each other. They're contradictory. Then there is the conflict between the mortal and the immortal. The mortal world is painful, but the immortal world is lasting. It has everlasting happiness. There's the conflict between life and death. For Keats, that immortal world is a happy world, is an ideal world, because there is life always in that world. There is no death in that world. No death of emotions, no death of feelings, no death of love, no death of beauty. So that world is a happy world for him, and it is that world where he longs to which he wants to be part of. But death, for him, death is a cause of worry. It is death which weighs him down. The fear of death, which weighs him down, and it takes away his happiness. And then there is a conflict between passion and escape. We see sometimes Keats trying to escape. We see the struggle between passions and escape. He enters into a world with intense emotions, but then he has to escape from that world. He knows he cannot be part of that imaginary world. He comes back to that real world. So we see and read about these conflicts in his poems. We see how Keats's own personality is reflected through these conflicts. And in the poem we also see that he draws parallels between certain things. In this particular poem he's drawing parallel between beauty, truth and love. He unites them, the three ideas. We see that there is a parallel between silence and eternity. They're both one, they're both treated as one. Silence is eternal, or reminds him of eternity, or eternity reminds him of silence. So they are both treated in a similar manner in Keats's poem. There is this idea of escape and pursuit. He talks about the escaping girls, the escaping maidens trying to escape, and the pursuit of the gods or the men that he saws as his notices are drawn on the body of the urn. And he talks about men and gods. He does not differentiate between the two. And he talks about the cold pastoral and friend to man. He, at one place, in one line in the last stanza, he calls the urn as a cold pastoral, but then in a few words later, he describes it as a friend to a man. So at one time it is cold, it is feelingless, it has no passion, it has no more warmth to offer to man. It is cold pastoral. It is objectively looking at the problems of mankind it is looking at them with indifference, but then he says it is also the friend of man. And the reason he calls it a friend is because he says he has a message to give to man. So in this way he draws certain parallels in this poem, in Ode on a Grecian Urn. Some of the themes of the poem, in the poem are I think I've already discussed these themes with you, but I will look over them again with you just to re-emphasize. The first one is the transitoriness of life, how beauty, youth, love fades away into nothingness. So life is transitory, and everything else but that is part of life is for a temporary while. He talks about the permanence of art, which is also an important theme. So everything in art, it is preserved. It is preserved with beauty, with meaning, with essence, with truth. So art is permanent, and art has all these wonderful qualities. And another important theme is that of negative capability, the poet losing himself into the other world, into the world of the urn. And then you have also Hellenism, which is his love for Greek art, which is what this poem is about. So these were some of the themes of Ode on a Grecian Urn. And I think I've discussed it enough with you now. The poem is simple, but the message is complicated. It is complicated because there are contradictions in the message, because there are views that you may read about. There may be critical reviews that you may read, and you may find them differing in their approaches or in their interpretation of the lines. That is why, that is where the difficulty lies. Otherwise, the message also is simple. The description of the lines is plain, and the message is plain, and the message is that of the unity of beauty and truth. So with that, I come to the conclusion of Ode on a Grecian Urn. Now I'd like to begin with the second poem. I would do half of it today with you, in fact part of it, and then in the next lecture I'm going to conclude this poem, and we are going to also discuss the themes. So let us start with Ode to a Nightingale. Ode to a Nightingale is a poem which carries similar themes as Ode on a Grecian Urn. You will find Keats struggling with same concepts. You will find him obsessed with the same ideas. You will find him talking about the same things as he did in Ode on a Grecian Urn. But in this poem, he selects a different object. In that previous poem, he was struck by the beauty of the Grecian urn. In this poem, he is struck by the beauty of the nightingale's song. It is a song of this bird. It is a song of nightingale, which I've already told you. It is what we call bulbul in Urdu. It is a song of the nightingale that haunts him, and that raises his emotion so high that he is led on. He's led on, and he wants to fly with the bird and become part of its world. So he selects another object in this poem, and it is that object that he becomes becomes focused to. He focuses with all his energies, with all his emotions, with all his intensity. He focuses on this object now. He focuses on the nightingale, and on the singing of the nightingale, and on the world of the nightingale, and all else is left behind. We shall again notice how through his negative capability he achieves that poetic, that creative energy. He achieves that blissful state where he can forget the worries, and he feels that he can create a blissful piece of art. So as you shall see, the nightingale is a symbol of immortality for the poet. Just like the world of the urn represented the immortal world, The nightingale and its world represents the immortality. And it is timeless and it is eternal. The nightingale, like the work of art, is also timeless and it is eternal. Men and generations of men will come and go. We die and we are replaced by our children. So, and the cycle continues. But he says the nightingale, although the bird also dies and is replaced by the next generations, but he says that the nightingale's song lives on. Through its song, the nightingale was special for people of the older generation. It's special for our generation, and it will be special for the next generation. So in that way, it is immortal. It is in the world of the nightingale is timeless. Time stops there. It is a beautiful world. So he will once again project himself into that beautiful world. He creates an imaginary world, projects himself in body and spirit, but forgets about his own body, forgets about his own spirit, forgets that he exists, and forgets about his own problems and worries, forgets about his real world, and only focuses with all his energy on the world of beauty. Keats distinguishes between two kinds of worlds: the external material world and the creative imaginary world. Now this is significant, and it's important that you understand this. I explained to you when I was explaining the Ode on Aggression, and to you also, Keats talks about two kinds of worlds. One is the external, this material world of ours, and the other is the creative and the imaginary world. The imaginary world that is created by the poet. This material world is finite. It is a slave of time. There are categories here of past, present and future, while the imaginary world, he says, it is not bounded by the limits of time and space. It is eternal and limitless. The same thing that I told you in the previous poem also. So the material world is finite and it is bounded by time, but the imaginary world has no limits. It is eternal and it is timeless. The same themes of truth and beauty you shall see are explored in this poem, and somewhat the pattern is also the same. The style is also similar. It is written in 8 stanzas. The poem is composed in 8 stanzas of 10 lines each. But you shall see that the 8th line in every stanza is shorter. If you take a look at all stanzas, you shall see that the 8th line in every stanza is shorter. So that is a trimeter. All the other lines are pentameter. Let us begin now with stanza 1 then. In the first stanza, Keats says, "My heart aches, and a drowsy numbness pains my sense, as though of hemlock I had drunk, or emptied some dull opiate to the drains 1 minute past, and lethe words had sunk." He says, my heart aches. My heart aches. In these lines, he's describing to you the effects of the song on him. Poet is out maybe in a garden, or he's imagining it, but he's listening to the song of the nightingale. He's listening to the song of the beautiful bird. He cannot see the bird. He can only hear the song of the bird, just like Shelley was inspired by the song of the skylark. Here, Keats is inspired by the song of the nightingale. The nightingale is invisible. Keats cannot see where it is, but he can hear the beautiful voice of the bird, and he says that my heart aches. Ache means pain. He says, my heart is full of pain. Pain. But you shall see this pain is not the pain that we think of. It is a pain due to extreme happiness. As he says, and a drowsy numbness pains my sense. And he says, my senses are getting drowsy. Drowsiness is the feeling of when you feel sleepy and you're not active. So he says, drowsy, I feel my senses going numb. My senses becoming drowsy. So drowsy that he says, pains my sense. It's a painful feeling. He says, this drowsiness, this numbness is painful. As though of hemlock I had drunk. He says, I feel these aches and this numbness. He says, I feel these and it appears as if I have drunk a hemlock. Hemlock was a poison which was given to Socrates, a great Greek philosopher who was charged for corrupting the youth, the Greek youth. So he was sentenced to imprisonment, and there he was given wine in which was poisoned, as a result of which he died. So he says, I feel like I have drunk the hemlock. I have drunk this poisonous wine, this poisonous drink, because I feel pain in my heart and I feel my senses becoming numb and drowsy. Or he says, I have emptied some dull opiate to the drains, 1 minute past. Or he says, maybe I have drunk some dull opiate. Opium, you know, is a drug that we take that is associated with opium is a drug that is associated with a state of semi-consciousness. So he says, it looks like I have taken that drug, and as a result of which Lethe wards had sunk. As a result of which he says, it seems that I have sunk into this river Lethe. River Lethe is a river in Greek mythology. It is a river in the underworld which is called the river of forgetfulness, and anyone who drinks from it, anyone who take bath from it, he forgets everything. This is why it is called a river of forgetfulness. So Keats is saying that it seems that I have taken opium and then have sunk into the river Lethe, because I am forgetting everything. I'm forgetting where I am, I'm forgetting my surroundings, I'm forgetting who I am. So that state of forgetfulness is upon me. 'Tis not through envy of thy happy lot, but being too happy in thine happiness. Now he shifts his mood. He says, I am not envy because you are happy. He's still listening to the song of the nightingale. He says, you are singing, you are happy, you are in a happy mood, that is why you are singing. But he says, I am not envious of your happiness, I am not jealous of your happiness, but I feel too happy for your happiness. I am happy for your sake, I am happy in your happiness. So this is the effect of that happy song on Keats. And then he says that thou, light-winged dryad of the trees, in some melodious plot of beechen green and shadows numberless, singest of summer in full-throated ease. He says that thou, that you, O you light-winged dryad of the trees, a light-winged dryad. He's comparing it to a female spirit which lives in the trees, which has got wings. It's a small fairy. These are small fairies, like you see, like the fairies that you see in that movie for kids, where you have Peter Pan. So you have those small fairies who've got wings at their backs, and they flutter about in the trees. So he says, he's using a metaphor for this bird nightingale. He's calling it, he's comparing it to a light-winged dryad that lives in the trees, because a nightingale is also hidden from his views. It is totally hidden in some trees. So he says, in some melodious plot of beechen green and shadows numberless. You are singing from and hidden from view because you are singing from some beechen trees, from the beech green trees, and the shadows numberless in thick shades. And you are singing of summer in full-throated ease. Full-throated is a reference to the intensity of her song. He says you are singing at the top of your voice, but with ease. There is no tension. So he says the whole space is filled up with your voice, although you are hidden from view. You are hidden in beech trees, or you're hidden in the thick shadows of the bushes and the trees, but only your song can be heard. Then stanza 2. In the second stanza, he carries the same idea forward. He says, oh, for a draught of vintage that had been cool a long age in the deep delved earth, tasting of flora and the country green, dance and provincial song and sunburnt mirth. Now he shifts the scene for you. He was talking about the nightingale first. Now he takes you to southern part of France. Now he takes you to those sunny parts of France near the Mediterranean Sea. He's taking you to those sunny spots which were the holiday spots for the Romans, which were the holiday spots for the Caesars, for the kings, who used to come there in the summer season and enjoy and bathe in the sun. He says, oh, for a draught of vintage. The vintage is a wine which is made from grapes. He says, I long for that wine which has been cool in a long age in a deep delved earth. I want that wine. I want to taste. I want a taste of that wine, which has been cool for a long time in the depths of the earth. You know that after the wine has been, these grapes are kept under the earth for a long time, and then wine is made. The juice from the juices, the wine is made. The acid, in fact, from the acid, the wine is made. Then the wine itself is kept in cool, dark cellars, normally made in the basements of the houses for a long time. And the older it is, the intenser it is. So he's talking about that strong wine, which has been stored long enough in the cooling earth. He says, I am reminded of that strong wine, which tastes of flora, of the flowers and the country green, which has a taste of the flowers and the green pastures of, and dance and song of provincial. Provincial refers to the southern France, and sunburnt referring to the sunshine and the sunny. So he says that strong wine would would take him, when he tastes that wine, he's reminded of the beauties of the southern France. The same effect does this song of Nightingale have upon him, that he can create, he's taken into that blissful state, into that imaginary happy state. Oh, for a beaker full of warm south, full of the true, the blushful hippocrene, with beaded bubbles winking at the brim and purple-stained mouth. Oh, for a beaker full of the warm south. Now he's talking about wine which is full, with the glass that is full to the brim with wine. He says, full of the true, the blushful hippocrene. Hippocrene, it is the fountain of the 9 muses of poetry. The muses that most poets pay tribute to, or they seek inspiration from before they write poetry. Milton did that. Spencer does that. Milton invokes, the Christian god, but Spencer invokes these goddesses of the Greek myth. And countless other poets, before they would begin their poems, they would invoke help of these goddesses of or called muses of poetry. So, but Hippocrene is a fountain. It's a fountain for these muses, and it erupted where the Pegasus, which is a flying horse, it is a horse which has got wings at its back, and Pegasus, when it landed on the earth, where it dug his hoofs, it is there where the fountain erupted. So he says, like, it's like a beaker. So he wants a beaker which is full to the brim, bubbling at the top, like a fountain, like the fountain which is bursting forth from the earth. With beaded bubbles, he says, winking at the brim, and purple stain mouth. And when it is so strong that when you've drunk it, it leaves a purple stain on your mouth. That I might drink and leave the world unseen, and with thee fade away into the forest dim. So he says, I want to taste that wine, and then I want to leave this world unseen, and with thee fade away into the forest dim. So he's longing, desiring to leave this world and to enter into the world of the nightingale. He wants to get drunk. He wants the help of a strong wine. He wants this, the strong wine which is kept under the earth, kept and cool for a long time under the earth. He wants the strong wine which is coming out of the earth from the fountain of the Hippocrene. He wants that strong wine which can make him oblivious of his surroundings, which can make him oblivious of the world around him, and which can take him into the other world, into his world of imagination. And it is, in fact, you know, that under the effect of wine, we've become forgetful of our surroundings, and the imaginary world becomes more real. The real world becomes unreal. So in the first stanza you saw that he was talking about the hemlock, the poison that was given to the Socrates, and then he talks about the leture, the opium. He talks about the opium drug, and he feels that, you know, he's forgetting his surroundings. He feels that, you know, he is sunk into some kind of forgetfulness. So he is talking about things, talking about drugs. He's talking about the Lethe river, the river of forgetfulness. He's talking about hemlock, which takes away the pains of this world. Socrates was relieved of the misery and the pain of this world, and his soul was, you know, united to the real world. So in the same way, he's talking about these chemicals and the wine, the strong wine which is made in France, and he wants to seek their help to leave this world and to enter into the imaginary world where all will be blissful, where all will be peaceful, where all will be happy. So it is that escape that he wants. The escape from the real world, the escape from this material world into the other world, which is the imaginary world, which is the creative world, and it is in that world that beauty and truth can be united, and it is in that world that all the truths are become bare for him, and he can see into the reality of the things like Wordsworth describes to you. So I have looked at the two stanzas with you in this lecture from Ode to a Nightingale. So stanza 3. In this stanza we shall see that Keats is going to take the same idea further on. He says, fade far away, dissolve and quite forget what thou among the leaves hast never known, the weariness, the fever and the fret here, where men sit and hear each other groan. Now you see his longing to leave this material world. He is longing to leave this material world, and he's longing to fade away into that imaginary world, into the world of the nightingale here. He says, fade far away, dissolve. I want to be dissolved. This is his negative capability, in fact. The poet, the ability of the poet, the ability of Keats to negate his self, to negate his personality, and to negate his reality, and to become part solely, wholly, and completely of the other world. So he says, I want to fade away into the other world, fade away from here and into the other world. I want to dissolve completely into the other world, become part of it. And I want to quite forget what thou among the leaves hast never known. So he says a bird is happy, it is singing happily because it has never tasted fear, it has never tasted death, it has never tasted miseries, it has never tasted weariness, it has never tasted men talking poorly, badly about each other. So he says the bird has not seen these things that we mortals have had to experience. And what are they? He tells you in the last two lines. He says the weariness, the fever, and the fret. Here, these things here, the weariness is the tiredness, the fever of this world, which always grips us with tension and worries, what to do and what not to do. And the fret also has to do with the materialism and the tensions and the worries that are the result of it. He says we are fretting over here, we bother over small things here. So these are the problems of the world, of the man in this world. And he says that where men sit and hear each other groan, so all they can hear, all that they have to talk to each other is about their pain, is about their hurts, is about their miseries. Where palsy shakes a few sad last grey hairs, where youth grows pale and spectre thin and dies. He says in this world, palsy, it's a disease in old age which causes involuntary movements of the muscles. The muscles become uncontrollable, and the old person, must have noticed, is shaky. His limbs and arms and hands, they shake violently. They're not in control. So he says where palsy shakes a few, where the youth fades away and we become old, and a few sad last grey hairs. This is again a reference to our to old age or baldness. The last grey hairs, there are few hair left on his head. So baldness increases, beauty dies, youth dies, where youth grows pale and spectre thin and dies. And he says, we don't stay young here forever. The youth grows pale, then spectre thin, and then he completely dies. So he says this external world is an enemy of man. We're not happy here. It does not give us happiness. It does not give us comfort. It does not console us. It is our enemy. Where but to think is to be full of sorrow and leaden-eyed despairs, where beauty cannot keep her lustrous eyes, or new love pine at them beyond tomorrow. He says, where but to think is to be full of sorrow. He says, even to think in this world causes sorrow. It results in sorrow. And leaden, he's talking about eyelids, eyes which are heavy or burdened with the weight of this world, with the worries of this world. He says, leaden, our eyes are as heavy as lead, due to the despairs, due to the burdens, due to the worries, due to the miseries of this earth. Where beauty cannot keep her lustrous eyes, where beauty is not forever, beauty is not lasting, beauty is not immortal, because it cannot keep the luster, the glow in her eyes. We will not stay young forever. The eyes become dim, and eventually the light in the eyes dies away completely. So he says the beauty cannot never stay, on forever in this world, or new love pine at them beyond tomorrow. He says, or he says, love, he says, is always new here. It is always changing. It is fickle. Love here is not constant. So today, this love is for someone, and tomorrow it is for someone else. So this pining, there is fickleness of love. There is no constancy in love. So Keats is openly talking about his concept, his idea of beauty and love that he spoke of in Ode on Aggression, and also he's telling you how beauty and love are both short-lived in this man-made world, in this external world, in this material world of man. Beauty and love are both temporary. Youth is also temporary. The three themes that he touches upon in Ode on Aggression, and also how youth dies in this world, how beauty is temporary in this world, how love is short-lived in this world. Just as beauty ends, love is also fickle. So Keats is repeating the same themes in this poem also, and we see that in the third stanza he despairs and he is saddened by the sad reality of our world. And from the next stanza we shall see that he escapes entirely into the world of the nightingale, and it is there that he finds real happiness. So we shall explore that part of the poem in the next lecture. In today's lecture I will conclude here on the third stanza. So I looked at the three stanzas with you today, and in the next lecture I'm going to discuss the whole poem with you, and also discuss some of the themes that emerge from this poem. Thank you very much.